So, today on Online for Authors, I'm talking with Rebecca Hodge, author of Island Endgame. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Terry. I'm so pleased to be here.
I am super excited to have you. Again, guys, this is a repeat author, which is fabulous. I love it when an author has touched me and then comes out with another book and then I get to have them back. Before we dive into the book, why don't you give us just like a quick little elevator pitch as to what readers are going to find when they open up Island Endgame?
So, I write suspense stories that have plenty of heart. And Island Endgame is the story of Kenzie Adams, who is a nurse who flees her hospital job to take a nursing position at a summer camp, which is located on an island in the Puget Sound. And she does this because she is grieving the loss of her young nephew, and she hopes that several months of calm and quiet and treating sunburns and scraped knees will let her heal. Unfortunately, when three fugitives invade the island camp and take hostages, Kenzie is front and center in efforts to not only save herself, but her companions. And her quiet summer is turned into something that's very, very different.
Absolutely. And I think it's you do this. In your last book that I read, it's the same thing where someone is trying to go someplace quiet and someplace quiet turns into something that is not so quiet. You you do that a lot where you take kind of an outdoor component and make it dangerous, and all of a sudden everything turns around. And the outdoor component often is almost a character, not quite, but has that character feel. Like it's very dependent on this place. And you did that. Why why this tool as a way of moving around? What is it about the outdoors that makes you say, I need it to be part of this story?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. For me, the setting of the book is a key component. I think that we underestimate the ways that our environment impact us. And whether that's the fact that the company you work for keeps your office at 62 degrees, or whether it's, steady gray clouds or heavy rain, we're impacted by what's going on around us, and pulling that forward so it's front and center in a story just creates the opportunity for so much latitude. I also really like putting my characters in a situation where they feel like they're out of their depth. And a radical change in environment, a challenge that's being driven by the outside world, can be incredibly challenging, and force the character to really dig deep in order to respond to what's going on. So, as a reader, I've always enjoyed books that pull the environment forward as a character. As a writer, it's a great tool for putting our characters in deep trouble.
Yeah, yeah, and you definitely do that. Let's jump to Kenzie for a minute. So you said she's a nurse. She's kind of running from her past. She has a nephew. He's passed. She feels somewhat responsible, as though maybe there was more she could have done, more she should have done, some things she shouldn't have done. All of this is going through her head. Where did she come from? Where did this idea of Kenzie Adams come from?
So her character and situation evolved gradually. I started with the idea that I wanted this summer camp as my setting. And so next I needed a character who would feel out of place there, who would be coming for other reasons than to embrace this camp environment. And the more I tinkered with it, Kenzie kind of walked on stage, and as she continued to evolve in my mind, it just became clear that this was going to be her story, and she was going to be driving it. She has lost her nephew, and even more heartbreaking, she has lost her beloved sister. Her sister does not blame her, continues to reach out, but Kenzie can't deal with that. And
Right,
so she
right.
really is struggling when she arrives at the island.
Absolutely. And I love how you were able to put in grief and allow people to see like the many different faces of grief, because the truth is she didn't need to lose her sister. She could have had her sister as this amazing support while they both went through this trauma, and instead she pushed everyone away because her grief was a private, and it was a very guilty grief where she needed to, essentially beat herself with a wet noodle for over and over while she did her grief. So that was really good. Um, of the characters, and you have some really great characters in here. So we have a nice cast. So she is the main character, but we have a big cast. Of the other characters, which one is your favorite and why?
Well, the character that was somewhat unexpected is the character of Chris, who is the 10-year-old son of the island's caretaker. Kenzie is appalled when she first sees him there because he reminds her so strongly of her lost nephew. And of course, that's what she's trying to avoid. But once Chris walked into the story, he's a very independent kid who is as familiar with this island as any of us would be with our own front yard, and very independent. His constant companion is his fuzzy dog Skagit, and he's a tough kid. He's knowledgeable and an interesting character. I had not initially planned on him becoming a point of view character, but I couldn't turn him away. And
Isn't it funny how that happens? We bring a character in, we suspect it's just going to be like a little, almost an unnamed, just this, and then all of a sudden they kind of take over and it's like, no, I'm here. I'm
yeah,
major. I'm a major character. And it's like, what? You were not the major character. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. You have to. Yeah.
you're exactly right. I mean, my main challenge was pushing Chris back so that he didn't take over the story.
Right, right. And it's funny how that happens. I actually have a manuscript that I was writing. It's stopped at the moment. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but the character that turned into one of the two main characters was going to be a brief in a scene and gone again. Like
Yes.
it was just going to be this character was just going to help me move this thing around, and then we were going to be on, and all of a sudden he's like, no, I'm it. I'm here. In fact, I'm more important than your original character. And you're like, what are you doing?
No. But isn't that a fun aspect of
It is.
writing a novel? I mean, certainly I enjoy it. There are moments when I really envy people who have their whole story plotted out in
Yeah.
detail, outlined, character backgrounds, all of that known before they sit down and write. It just sounds so tempting because it sounds so efficient.
Yes.
Well, I have never been able to write that way, and one of the things I love is tripping over unexpected things, and, Chris falls in that category, in Island Endgame.
Absolutely. So would you call yourself a pantser then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely am a pantser with the first draft, and
Yeah.
then after that, I step back, I outline. It's really helpful for me at that point to see the patterns and how I've screwed up or
Yeah.
skipped over
Yeah.
things, and, so I engage that left side of my brain, once I have a messy first draft in front of
Right.
me. But the initial filling the blank page is definitely a pantsing endeavor, which stands for by the seat of your pants. You're
Exactly.
you're just heading out there and seeing where you end up.
Well, and I'm often writing and I have no clue where this is going. It's like, I wonder where we're going today. I have no idea. I think the thing about being a pantser that scares me the most is my books tend to be in the 80,000 word category, and I have been to 65,000 words and still am not sure how it's going to wrap up and end. And that gets a little terrifying,
Yeah,
because you think I've done a lot of writing here.
It is. Well, and in this story, I had a first draft, and when I stepped away and looked at it, I decided that I'd made a real mistake. I'd made a decision that made the plot really have some complicated zigzags, and it didn't flow right, and really some of the logic had kind of disappeared. I ended up tossing out 100 pages to fix it,
Oh
and,
my gosh.
it's
That's
a painful choice,
yes, it is.
but it was the right call.
Yeah.
Once I got rid of the loops and whirls and zigzags, I was able to create a straight path that, served the story in a much stronger way.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understand that as well. I actually was writing something and I lost my character's voice. I had
Mm,
gotten very excited about word count and was paying attention to that far more than I was paying attention to what I was actually writing, and when I went back to read it, it was like, "This is horrible," and so I did. I got rid of about 40,000 words.
yeah,
Just and
it's
it does it
painful, isn't it?
well, it's like that was a lot of writing. 40,000 words, guys, doesn't happen in an afternoon, right? This is a
Yeah.
lot of work that went into it, and it wasn't good work, and then I had to throw it out. So I know that feeling of, you have this and it's like, yeah, but you're not gonna use any of that. Uh, but you never know. Yours, you may be able to put into another story. If it has some zigzags and things, you never know. One of those might be the beginning of something else. So
Yeah, stay tuned.
stay tuned. All right. It was in Puget Sound. I'm
Yes.
curious, do you know Puget Sound personally? Did you have to do a lot of research? How does that work?
Yeah.
Because I know you're from North Carolina right now, so I'm not sure what you know about that area.
So I grew up in North Carolina, grew up in Raleigh. And when I was 18, I decided I wanted to do something vastly different for a summer job. And so I tracked down and accepted a job as a horseback riding instructor at a summer camp on Lopez Island in the Puget Sound. And it was quite a summer. I lived in a teepee. I took showers when the campers remembered to build a fire under the hot water tank. And I woke up every morning looking at the silhouette of Mount Baker, edging the border of the Puget Sound. For an 18-year-old to head out knowing no one and immerse for a summer in that environment, it definitely created strong memories. And so it was with that in mind that the summer camp setting was my starting point for this
Yeah.
story. And of course, I had to have teepees, et cetera, as part of the saga. And, the story takes place on a fictitious island called Salish Island, because I couldn't find, an actual Puget Sound island that gave me the geography I wanted
That you
and
needed,
that,
right.
and the size and the isolation. So,
Absolutely.
you can't find Salish Island on a map, but, it certainly was in the spirit of, accurate Puget Sound area, and then I, of course, did a fair amount of research just to make sure I wasn't screwing up, in terms of plants and animals and ocean currents and
Currents and all the things, right.
all the things. That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. Was there anything that you found in your research? I'm a research junkie. I absolutely love the research aspect of writing. Was there anything that you found that was like, wow, that's really cool, or wow, that's going to help my story go forward? I love it when I come up with those moments.
Well, in the book, the island was originally colonized by a group, looking for kind of a social experiment,
A
a
utopian kind of existence.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a utopia. That particular group is fictitious, but what surprised me was that in the 1920s, 1930s, the Puget Sound area actually was home to a number of utopian groups. Some of them located on the mainland at the edge of the sound, others on various islands. The only thing the groups had in common was their failure. Each of them had kind of their own twist on things, but some of them survived for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so that was unexpected. I was able to put just a little bit of that into the novel, but I had fun reading more extensively about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have problems when you do research that you get down the rabbit hole and then you
Oh,
forget why you're there?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, and then what's even worse is when I'm so excited about it that I pack a whole bunch of it into the story, and then as I'm going back to edit, I'm like, "Okay, wait a minute, this
You
is
don't need all of this.
ridiculous.
Right.
Don't
Right.
let's, eliminate 3 pages and use 3 sentences
Right.
instead."
Right. That's one of the things that I have found with research that's really difficult is you find this incredible information. And if you're an information junkie like I am, then you want to use it all. Like, ooh, this is all this great stuff. But the truth is that you're not writing a history book. You're writing you're writing a novel and it's fiction. And the facts that you put in need to be there because they move your story forward.
Exactly right.
There's something your reader needs to know for this story to make sense or needs to know to help with the background or the scenic aspects so that they kind of understand what you're seeing or what the characters are doing. And that means that those 3 pages don't belong there.
That's exactly right, and it
Right.
is an easy trap
Yeah.
in when I'm reading, I'm often a beta reader for, other authors, and the trap I also see is if the author is a specialist in a particular area, there's this gut temptation to try and educate the world,
Yes.
so the psychologist does detailed psychological evaluation of everyone on the page and perhaps that does not serve the story well.
Right, and maybe only one of the characters do you need to know that much about, right?
Exactly.
So I actually read a historical fiction where I talked with the author about it because I felt like I was reading 2 books. I was reading a history book and I was reading a novel. And when I was reading the novel portion of the book, I really enjoyed myself. And when I was reading the history portion of the book, I had to prop my eyes open with toothpicks because it was too detailed and too much. And I talked a lot with them about how to take pieces of that information that might be pertinent and move them into the story so that the character could interact with those facts versus just 3 pages of what the missile looked like,
Exactly. I
right?
know you need to use facts like that as a seasoning, not as
Yes,
a primary ingredient. And
absolutely. And that's
sometimes
hard to do
it, it,
well,
it
and
is
when I go and I'm doing research and I end up with, 42 pages on this particular, event, and it's like, yeah, we don't need that. I'm gonna need maybe 2 or 3 of these facts.
yep.
And so that's when I stop myself. So when I'm doing research, I put all my research facts into its own document, and then I go through and I read that and I say, which of these pieces is going to be most pertinent for my book? And then I keep my research document but I don't use it in my it's like that's a whole nother piece of the writing process.
Absolutely right.
Absolutely. When someone is done reading this book, other than having said, wow, this was a really great, suspense, I enjoyed it. What do you want them to get from it? What do you hope they see?
I think that I hope that a number of things come through with the book. One is a sense of determination for fighting what you believe in, which certainly multiple of the characters follow through. An emphasis on connecting to those we love. That's true in Kenzie's relationship with her sister. And it's also true in one of the other point of views characters who, as the book evolves, you discover that he has a definite sweet spot for someone. And he's a rather retiring person and
Yeah,
has never voiced his feelings. And sometimes it does take a major event to push us forward into making ourselves known. And so I think I would hope that that's another takeaway from the story.
absolutely. Now I'm going to ask you a question that's going to be difficult for you because you literally just got this book out. Do you have something coming up?
Uh,
Are you working on another project?
yeah, I'm
Oh,
always working on
okay.
another project, and my challenge at the moment is I've got 2 projects that are each, well along, and each of them have an issue that is not yet resolved, and so I'm not quite sure which one is gonna win, as the one that moves forward. One of them is a story about a college student who steps into her roommate's life when her roommate is killed in an accident. It's set on the North Carolina coast at Hammocks Beach State Park, and so returns to the North Carolina roots. And then the other story is the story of a security guard who has been disgraced over a situation that went wrong and who is now faced with the kidnapping of 2 young children and has
Ooh.
to rise to the occasion. So,
And
2
where is that
different
one set? Where's that?
so it's set in North Carolina. It's
Okay.
a little different in that the environment does not play as
I,
big a role, and
right.
so, I need to give that some further thought as well.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 possible works in progress. Um, I would love to say that I hope to have something out next year. We'll see if that plays out.
That's always the question, isn't it? It's
It
like,
is.
oh, like how much work can I do and what's going to happen? And then the idea, like you said, both of these have issues that have kind of like made you wonder, like, where am I going? I think that a lot of people assume that these ideas just like, pop up in our heads, we just start writing, we just move on. And often you start writing and then you just kind of stop and look and think, oh, I just don't know. And I think that even happens with people who are plotters. Um,
It's,
it
I
just
think
happens
it must happen earlier
I
on
was gonna say it
stage.
happens it happens at a
Yeah,
different point. They haven't begun writing, but they're still sitting there with that plot going, I'm not going anywhere with this.
yeah.
Like, I don't even know what to do with this, right?
Yep, yep. I
Yeah.
think we all have partial stories that are tucked away somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I know I do. I have a folder and I call them story starters.
Yep.
And it's either a character that has whispered something, or it's a situation, or it's a place that I've been and I've thought, oh, this would be a beautiful place to have a story. And those are all sitting there. And when I get them, especially when I'm in the middle of another project, I write it down and then I tell that character in my head, hush now. I've written it down and I'll come back to you. I can't do two things at once.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. So, hey guys, if you want to continue this conversation, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There you're going to have a chance to win not a digital, but a signed copy of Island Endgame. Tell me something that you liked or learned during this podcast, and you will be in the running for that. So, Rebecca, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, talk with you about your writing, your books, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best point of contact is my website, which is RebeccaHodgeFiction.com. And there you'll find all kinds of information about all 3 of my books, a communication forum to reach out to me directly, and a sign up opportunity for my newsletter, which comes out quarterly. So I try not
Absolutely.
to nag you too much. But yeah, come on by and check it out. That definitely is the go-to spot.
Absolutely. And guys, I will have all of that in the show notes so you'll be able to reach out to Rebecca. Go out, grab yourself a copy of Island Endgame. You are not going to be disappointed. Of the books I've read of yours, this is my favorite. I absolutely loved this one.
Thank you.
Not that I didn't like the others, mind you, they're all really good, but this one really, I don't know why, but it really struck me. And I think I really understood Kenzie. Like, I really felt her pain, and I felt I also, like you, liked Chris, and I loved the fact that despite how smart he was and island smart he was, that he was still very much a 10-year-old boy who chooses often not to listen and do what he's told. And I liked that about him because that made him so real. But run out, grab the book. And Rebecca, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much, Terry. It was great to be here.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.